Hi there, fellow port geeks. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how port wine is stored and served. So first things first. Like any other wine, port needs to be stored at a relatively low temperature, and we should avoid major temperature shifts. We should also try and shelter it from strong light as much as possible. This is especially important for vintage port, which is quite sensitive, and we should always aim to keep the stable temperature below 15 degrees Celsius. So let's start decanting a bottle of vintage port. I have already opened the bottle here. We're going to do this in the most simple possible way. I usually use a funnel just like this one, so that I'm very clumsy and I make sure that nothing wrong happens. And then the best way to make sure that there is no sediment going into the decanter is by using this gauze and make sure that all the sediment stays there. So now we just slowly pour the vintage port into the decanter. So another good tip to decant vintage port is that you leave the bottle upright for a couple of hours at least before you actually decant it. So you give the sediment a chance to settle at the bottom of the bottle, and that will make it easier to make sure it's sediment free when you drink it. Another important thing to know about decanting vintage port is that practice makes perfect. So just open plenty of bottles and decant them, and after a while you get this down to an art. And there you have it. It's this easy to decant a bottle of vintage port. And now I would recommend that you just leave it, let it settle for a while, let it breathe. It's going to open up. All the aromas are going to become more evident. Now it's time to drink it and enjoy it. And let's find out a little bit more about service temperature and food pairing. So let's talk about service temperature. The ideal temperature to enjoy port really depends on some key aspects. Your own personal tastes, the environment where you are drinking it, and also the style of port you're drinking. Many people will advise you to drink port at room temperature, but that really depends on the room. So imagine you're in the Brazilian summer enjoying a glass of port, you will probably want to put it in the fridge. But if you're in the middle of the mountains in the German winter, you probably won't need to do that. Having all this in mind, this is what we suggest. For white port, we suggest 8 to 10 degrees. For ruby port, we suggest 14 to 18 degrees. And for tawny port, slightly chilled, 10 to 14 degrees. And this, of course, will vary according to your own preference. Another frequent question about port is how long can you keep the bottle after you open it? Please keep in mind that all ports benefit from fridge storage after opening, ideally using a vacuum system to remove the air of the bottle. Most ports retain their quality for approximately 1 month. Although aged tawnies, because they have been in contact with the air through the wood for many years, you might leave them open for up to 6 weeks. Vintage ports, however, after having been closed inside the bottle for many years, decades even, will be best consumed within 2 to 3 days after opening the bottle. I guess that's not really a problem. So now we're going to enter into glassware, which is such an important thing for port. Normally people use this typical known port glass. It's a tulip-shaped glass. But actually us at the School of Port recommend you to use a white wine glass. So this is a typical white wine glass. And why do we recommend that you use this one instead? For two main reasons. First, it's much easier to find. You don't have to have a specific glass for port at home, and everyone always has, and they're everywhere. You can easily find a white wine glass. Secondly, because it's bigger, and it will allow more air to get in contact with the port, and therefore it will help release all the fantastic aromas that you find. Usually we serve port in smaller portions, normally about half the normal portion of a red wine. So it allows you to enjoy your port and drink responsibly. So keep in mind that all the information we've shared with you in this episode is just our suggestion. They're just ideas. There are no rules. You should pay attention to what you prefer, to what your own taste is, so you make the most out of this experiencing of enjoying port. And remember, stay tuned for more episodes and follow us at the School of Port, brought to you by the Port Med people at Symington Family Estates.